David Beavers.
So glad you're here. David's an elder at our church. This is episode 3 in Elisha, our summer Old Testament character series, which if you've joined in the other episodes, you know we usually preach this, but we have a very full preaching schedule. We've been in Luke all year with Simply the Gospel. And if you missed those first two, we highly encourage you to go back and watch those because these do build upon themselves. You can catch that. Go back on Facebook, YouTube. Also, we're putting those on the podcast, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. A lot of people have been listening to them at work. So you do that quite a bit, don't you, David?
Oh, yeah. That's my main thing I consume, honestly, of media is probably podcasts.
Yeah. So you can check those out and catch up with that. This is episode 3, Elisha and the Needy. But before we get into today, let's backtrack a little bit to where we ended last week with Elisha and the bears. So kind of a wild story where we ended last week, David.
Oh, yeah.
And all I could think about as we left was the old Saturday Night Live skit, bears, 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 bears. That was in my head all night long. And I've been trying to track and see where the Wilson County, Smith County bear is. I haven't seen him in a while. So have you seen any news updates?
I guess we're safe right now. I haven't seen him in a while.
We're safe. But kids, I would not make fun of bald people. In the meantime, you just never know when they could call one out. We have a few bald people here at Crossroads, so be nice to them, right?
Oh, extremely, because those bears, and there's no forest there over in Bethel, so.
We talk about that. No forest, no bears, right?
Right.
And yet,
Here these bears were completely out of place, and any contemporary Hebrew reader at the time would have seen that detail and go, wait a minute, this is way out of place. So these things are not where they're supposed to be. Yeah. And the closest forest could be about 10 miles away, but these bears were way out of place. And so it's just like this chaos was just erupting from these kids that were probably not covenant keepers.
Yeah, we had the discussion about, people always make fun of running or the run club, and we had that discussion that I think Laney had brought up, and Laney and Gabe had brought up, that 42 kids got mauled, or young lads, troublesome men, young men, and 42 got mauled, but it didn't necessarily say there was only 42.
Right.
There could have been 100.
Probably at least.
So
this was a mob.
What did that teach us?
Be faster.
Be faster. And if you're not, join the run club, because you don't have to be the fastest. You just have to be faster than
42 kids.
42 kids. You're out there running, you don't got to be the fastest, just faster than the guy you're with if the bear comes out, right? So join the run club. We'll get you ready. Bear proof, right? So we're glad you're here on this live stream. We're going to jump in, and we're going to pick up with Elisha. And first week we really looked more at Elijah setting up the calling of Elisha. And then last week was really this beautiful story of them walking in lockstep together, and then Elisha getting the anointing, and then kind of how he was doubted at first and even mocked a little bit. After the bear mauling incident, I'd say the respect probably went up just a touch.
The disrespect seemed to end right there. Everybody is like, this guy's for real. Even the sons of the prophets are now. As his biggest critics. They're back in filing and rank behind him at this point.
Yeah, so if you're like prophet, or you're like kind of maybe you're in our day-to-day, we'd have a pastor, and like people are like doubting you, and then the people that are like jeering you get mauled by bears. Everybody else is like, I think I'm on that guy's side.
That's a safe bet. A safe bet right there.
So these next two sessions that we're going to be going through, we're going to be looking at a narrative and an answer to Elisha's questions that he originally asked at the Jordan when he said, "Where is Yahweh, the God of Elisha?" And what we're going to simply see tonight is, what is the answer to that, David? Where is Yahweh, the God of Elisha?
We're going to see a couple places, but today we're going to focus on the needy.
Yeah.
Because quite simply, you have to know you need the Lord. And if you think you've got it handled, that's the best way to not find him, that's for sure, for him not to act in their lives. So
yeah, that goes beyond any social class, any money you might have, any earthly status one might have. That doesn't really help you. And the question really comes down to, we're really all needy. The question comes down to, are we aware of it or not? And if we're aware of it, then we seek the Lord. If we're not, then we tend to be self-reliant, which is a problem in of itself.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to dive into this. I want to encourage you, if you're watching tonight, if you'd like to text in a question to the church text line, you can text in a question. Put one in the comments there. Pastor Ryan Miller, our worship and media arts pastor, is doing all the filming and lights and everything tonight, so he'll be keeping an eye out for that. Also, I've got the text line right here on my computer as we go, so if you have a question, text that in. We'll try to get to it as we go through this. So, David, the king of Israel, we're picking up where Elisha's at. Joram he doesn't really recognize this need. Through Yahweh's blessing in the story of Elisha, he kind of doesn't want to, it comes down to will he humble himself? And how does that go?
Well, after Ahab dies, Moab kind of rebels against some kind of treaty they had going on. It's like, well, I guess Ahab was a strong king, and now it's Joram. It's like, well, we're not going to do that deal anymore. We're gonna start raiding, and there's a problem. And so Joram, he actually winds up pairing up with the king of Judah and also the king of Edom. So you kind of have you have all the descendants of Jacob and Esau kind of reuniting right here in this kind of this crazy little story, because they got to take care of this Moabite problem. And as they're, nobody asks the Lord that, should we do this? They're going out and they wind up getting in over their head on something. It's like, oh, this is bad. And it's like, well, is there any prophet near? And it's like, for some reason, Elisha's around.
Okay.
He's over around in the camp or somewhere, and they especially the king of Judah, he recognizes, like, yes, this is a man of God, and it's kind of funny, Joram's attitude towards the whole thing, because Elisha sees Joram, and of course the whole house of Omri, Ahab's house, all that stuff. Elijah and Elisha not friendly to, not on good terms. Right. And he sees the king of Israel, Joram, and he goes, "What do you have to do with me?" It's like, don't you have Baal and Asherah, the gods, the idols
really
of your...
kind of an attitude. I mean, like, literally, like, the wording, I think, in Hebrew, as we were looking at, says, like, what to me? Like, what does this have to do with me? Because at this time, for those watching that may not be up on the history part, that this is after King David and Solomon and the descendants from there, and Solomon splits the kingdoms in two and becomes Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Israel falls earlier as they're both disobedient, but they're more disobedient than Judah. So you have the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah, and then the descendants of Esau, which if you read in the Bible, you might see as maybe Edomites at times, or they'll say descendants of Esau or Edomites. And all of them come together to go against Moab, which is generally to the south of them, right? South, southeast from Moab. And, Elisha, he doesn't really understand, like, what's this got to do with me? You didn't ask the Lord. You didn't ask me. Like, why do you want me to come in now? I mean, is it almost like that they've decided what they want to do, and now they're just trying to get the prophet to put his blessing on it?
Well, they find themselves in a bad situation where it looks like they have no water, so they're dying out there of thirst. They're like, man, we've really, we've messed up. It's pretty much kind of the whole situation. Find a prophet.
They're like, we've heard he's done work with water before.
Right.
He threw some salt in the water and fixed it. Could you get this guy there? So we're already seeing signs of foolishness with this, right? The Lord has not ordained it. They've just decided it. And in this region, if you can't move them from water to water, if you can't move your military from water source to water source, you are in big trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Because you cannot sustain out there even a day. I mean, unless you move water to water. I remember watching it was the movie Kingdom of Heaven, and it was about the Jerusalem being sacked by the Muslims. I don't remember what year it was, 1100 something. And they talk about how long it was going to take the General Saladin to get there, and they said it'll take him 12 days. And they said, well, how do you know it's 12 days? They said, because he'll move from water to water. He was moving 200,000 men. You can't move 200,000 men without a water source.
Water and food, logistics.
And clearly, in this great meeting of the three minds of the kingdoms, no one thought, how are we going to feed and water these guys?
Well, and what's kind of funny is we were talking about the attitude of Joram. It's like, well, the only reason I'm here is because they won't. It's because the other two, or the only reason I'm talking to you, Elisha, is because I'm with these two other guys, because they don't want to,
yeah. Not really interested in being here.
So the only reason they're having any association is because the king of Judah in Edom in there, and they don't. I guess at least Judah doesn't want anything to do with his Joram's previous sources, or Baal.
Yeah, yeah, and northern Israel had been very synonymous with Baal worship. Really, all both kingdoms to some level, but especially in the north, in the high places, and this has become very prevalent. And what we're going to see right now as we move forward is that, in heavy contrast to how the king of Israel comes at Elisha, these next two stories in the same chapter are very different. There are two women that are really on the opposite end of the social spectrum, and yet they are very well aware of their need for Yahweh in their lives. They are in a desperate point of life. They have both reached points where they are desperate. They are humbled. And that brings us first to the poor widow. So David, tell us a little about this widow, this first encounter that Elisha has.
Well, she's a wife of one of the sons of the prophets who, I guess at this point, they've kind of fallen in line, and they're under Elisha. And her husband dies, and if you're a widow, you face destitution, economic collapse. There's no way for you to support yourself, and there's a major problem. And if it just introduces it in the first few verses of chapter 4 there. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." It's quite a problem.
Yeah. This is one of those moments when we think often that we have problems. And people do, I don't want to make light of that. People do face very serious problems. But the problems that we face in modern day society in America are not quite the same problems that people have faced historically. This literally is, my husband has died, I'm a widow, I really can't even own this property, can't become his brother's wife, I have these 2 sons, I'm in debt. She has no chance.
None.
There's no options.
Under this kingdom, Joram's kingdom, her chances are basically as bad as they can be. It's the type of system that will keep her oppressed, keep her poor, and make situations, in fact, even worse, because now you got creditors coming to take the sons, and now there will be no men to be able to take care of her. So
become even more so alone. And this man is a member of the Son of the Prophets who have been skeptical of Elisha, to this point. And she was a woman that was, her husband revered the Lord. And ultimately, this is a land that is saturated with Baal worship. And now they're the outliers. These followers of Yahweh are the outsiders, which was probably financially disastrous for them, because you're not in the system, you're not in the wheel and the cog. We see that in our culture today more and more, moving more to a secularized culture, more of a kind of a new cultural world religion of, if you don't think this way or act this way, then you're out. We don't want to do business with you. And they find themselves in that situation. And now her husband has deceased. He's accrued a lot of debt. Now, I want to say this about the debt. There's a lot of teaching on debt. We've taught, I've taught Financial Peace University, others have. The debt that we incur here is generally from consumer spending.
Right.
And spending on items we don't have. Talk a little bit more about debt in biblical times, because you could become indebted, and not because you went to the mall and bought too much fine clothing, right, or ran up credit cards. What are some ways people would end up accruing debt?
Just trying to feed themselves.
Yeah.
Or if they had any land, trying to do what they had to maintain it, a crop or farm, and the crop goes bad, they're just they're in some financial peril.
Yeah, so one or two bad seasons of cycle, and you don't get a crop, you can't feed your family, you have to go borrow money to feed your family, then you don't have seed to put in the ground the next year, so then you have to go borrow money to plant seed, and if you have 2 bad years in a row, you're pretty much out of the loop. And there was really not the same financial protections we have today with a strong central government. This is kind of like we talked about in the first week, kind of this Game of Thrones type deal. This could have been situations where just buying, a bushel of wheat or buying some bread might have cost as much as, buying a used car, because there was that scarce, especially in the middle of a famine.
Oh, yeah.
Elijah had just prayed for it to rain, not rain 3.5 years. So we're only a few years removed from that, and that may have put people in a pinch. So this is a different type of debt. This is not from overuse, but what is going to be the cost? The creditors that have, and I don't want to get too far off on this, when you get into Nehemiah, when the law is read and Nehemiah and Ezra come down hard on Israelites, God's people, for extorting and putting loans and a burden on their own people, which they're not supposed to do according to the law.
Heavily against everything the Torah was trying to set up, because you have all the years of Jubilee,
Yeah.
the 7 and the 7 to 7 Jubilees, where like ancestral land was supposed to be returned right back to the people, that if they lost it because of debt, bad crops and debt, and debts were supposed to be forgiven every so often, because God wanted a kingdom that was not oppressing people with debt to where they couldn't get out of it, and avoid situations like what we're seeing right here with this woman.
Because here's going to be the cost. It's going to be your 2 sons. They will have to be sold into slavery just to pay the debts, literally to feed them. So it's going to be the decision. Do I lose my sons to debt, or can I even feed my kids? And it's a brutal situation. And you look at this, it's not like there's someone she can call to get the money. It's not daytime TV. You can't get your title back with Title Max. Like, it's not how this works. This is slavery. Literally, her children are going to be sold into slavery. And they're already not following the law, so it's not like they're going to be released after 7 years, in a year of Jubilee. They're no longer upholding the law. They're operating in Baal worship. So these things are not going to come to pass. And the first thing we need to realize is this woman, as you just said, is the victim of a very oppressive kingdom. The system is built to keep her and those boys down, so that the people in charge continue to have the wealth and the power. And instead of caring for a widow, what does this kingdom really want to do to her and her sons, David?
Extort them, plain and simple. I mean, Joram's dad Ahab killed a guy because he framed him and killed him just so he could take his vineyard. If he wanted it, if I'm going to, him and Jezebel come up with a scheme to take it. It was, they didn't care who they hurt. They just wanted what they wanted.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a lot of talk about spirits. You'll see a lot of things, read or social media, about spirit of Eve, spirit of Jezebel, and these different things that can happen, spirit of Ahab. And I don't get too far into, I don't want to overread into that stuff, but you do see this, when you talk about the spirit of Jezebel, this manipulation, this greediness, this taking from people, this self-importance. And as you see people with this is continued in this kingdom, and this has become a kingdom that sets up the people at the top, and it oppresses the people below. And you have a very small majority there, and that is not the way that God designed the law. These were supposed to be a thriving society where it really worked for everyone.
Where they're helping each other out.
Yeah, which is really a picture of what Jesus does with the church, is it not?
Yes, very much so. It's supposed to be a community that I am my brother's keeper.
Yeah.
If you see your brother over there and his farm, just something happened to his farm, and it's he's fallen on some hard times. But my crop is, thank God it's done well. It's like, well, that means I'm supposed to help him because he is my responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's the ethic of a lot of these laws. It sounds strange, but when you understand them in their context, they're meant to take care of each other. A lot of these things, it's about personal responsibility to one another, and even the stuff where they're building parapets on their roof. It's like, you're liable if somebody falls off your roof. So it's kind of like liability laws, or
Yeah, don't get me started on liability as a 10-year insurance agent, David. So,
or if your bull's known to gore somebody, and you don't take care of this thing, that's your fault. But if it gores somebody, you had no idea it was like this. But after it's known to do this, and you don't take care of that situation, you're liable.
You have a responsibility to that.
So kind of like, I guess, it'd be like manslaughter laws today. It's like if you're driving like a maniac out there, 30 miles over the speed limit, and you reckon somebody get them hurt, you're liable.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of these laws, when you understand them in their context, it's about taking care of each other and giving this community this wisdom to say, it's like, hey, I am responsible for the widow, the orphan, the needy, all the, God has given us that responsibility to be the generous people who take care of each other.
But in this system, until Elisha's about to show up, which we're about to get into, she doesn't really have a future in this kingdom. This kingdom has no place for her. It's hopeless. It's destitute. And God's kingdom is far more generous than that, but the kingdom that she's living in is not. So here comes Elisha. Elisha comes up, and he asks her, "What shall I do for you?"
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, where have we heard that before, David?
Elijah says it to him.
Yeah, and now he's repeating it.
He's repeating it here.
Yeah, it was just very interesting. And he proceeds to ask what means she has, right? So he repeats the words of Elijah. Elijah said it to Elisha. Now Elisha shows up in this desperate situation, and he says the exact same words. And then he proceeds to say, "Tell me what you have in the house." That's his response. Or let me say it this way. What have you got to work with?
And she says, nothing except, and the Hebrew word is literally like a jarlet, the smallest little jar of oil you can think of, just like maybe enough for like an anointing flask.
Yeah, like a little vial like you would have, right?
Yeah, it's like,
which not even enough to cook a meal or even really make anything of that amount.
That's the only time that word's used, and it's supposed to be like a really small vessel.
Yeah. And traditionally, that would not have been something that had been used for cooking. Something in that would have been generally used for anointing, or it would have been the highest quality they had for reserved for that type use of some type of blessing or anointing. But she's like, hey, this is kind of all I got left, which would probably be the good stuff.
Right.
I've got this one little vial of this little top shelf that I've been holding on to. And this small size would be very comparable with what we saw back with Elijah, with Zarephath in 1 Kings 17, where Elijah has performed a similar miracle to this. Do you think that's an accident that we're seeing a parallel between these two?
Pure coincidence.
Yeah,
That's how the Bible.
Got to be. Yeah, God's not trying to show us anything here.
Right. No, there's no patterns.
Yeah. I'm trying to help the needy through you.
Right. But yeah, very much a pattern. You see Elijah. That was now I'm forgetting what he was. It was. I'm trying to remember what it was.
It's been a while. It was a measure of.
It was flour or something.
Flour. It was a measure of flour and enough. Was that the one where it was like it's enough to make one? I was going to make enough to make me and my son a cake and then die.
Yeah, and it just keeps replenishing or
so
something.
So it doesn't like fill up. Like this one we're going to see in a minute fills up, but that one it just never really runs dry. Like there was this. Like there's this much in there, and then every time you go back to it, there's still that much.
Yeah, still enough to make their meals through the whole famine.
The only time I have that experience is like I'm working out or running or something, where it's like no matter how far you go, you're like, there's still that long left. That never happens with food. I never like get into a bag of chips or a little thing of like Little Debbie's or something, and I'm like, oh man, it just keeps replenishing. I'm like, hey, the box is empty. Yeah, yeah, that's my own problem. I'm working on it. So Elisha tells the widow to prepare for this overwhelming generosity of God. And what does he tell her to do, David?
Go to the neighbors, find every empty vessel. And the word there is much more like just a generic, anything that can hold anything. Okay. So you're talking, if they have a bucket, a pot, a cooler, whatever.
Which would not have been normal, because normally they would have been put in very particular vessels or cisterns. It would not have been for any use. Right? So he said, go get everything, and then what happens next?
Well, it tells them to, shut the doors behind you. For some reason, this part they want hidden. So all the neighbors are bringing in all these, any kind of container, like used water bottles, whatever,
Yeah.
or like we would have,
Yeah, whatever you can scrounge up.
it's like whatever, the Coke bottles rolling around in your car, they're just, here, have my empty, my empty stuff. So any kind of pails, whatever, their neighbors for some reason are bringing them. They don't know, they don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then after they bring the stuff, Elisha tells them, hey, close the door behind you. I guess this part's not for
Yeah. It's not a,
nosy onlookers.
yeah.
And out of this small little jar, she just keeps filling up every type of container to its till they're completely full, until I guess the neighborhood is empty of until they're exhausted of all containers.
So this flow of oil doesn't stop until, like I said, everything is full, which is interesting because you talk about empty vessels being filled, and then you think about these, treasure in earthen vessels. You have this vessel of honorable use that we're supposed to pray to be, and like all this vessel use and the vessels we're supposed to be, and yet it's being filled with oil, which we know symbolically is usually a representation of the Holy Spirit. And here is the Lord coming to this broke, desperate, outcast woman and filling up lavishly, beyond the wildest measure of all this oil. And I think there's a couple different things going on here. Obviously, God is showing what the law was supposed to do, what people who follow the Lord should be doing, how generous and loving he is, but also some foreshadowing, I think, to what he's going to do by the prophets leading up to the ultimate prophet, the Son of God, Jesus. So she reports to the man of God, and Elisha tells her, go, sell the oil, complete shalom. Shalom, is that shalom, not shalom,
It's
right?
the verb form of shalom.
Okay. So it's like an action, right?
Right.
Of that. Yeah. Go do peace. Your debts, or I guess make peace with your debts, and you and your son live with whatever is left over. So this is literally enough. He says, go sell it, go make your peace with your debts, and then you're going to have enough to pay off your debts and still have enough to live on. It was about lavishing upon somebody.
And I think, they're able to just live on somewhat indefinitely by the amount of oil they sold. Because it's not saying this will last you a little bit. I think this is taking care of them.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing that, it was so often we see the Lord show up in these, it's always more than enough. It's this outpouring, this overflowing. Salvation, right? The deposit of the Holy Spirit. It's more than enough. So much time we spend praying for more. And I counsel with people, and I'm like, you don't need more. You have the Holy Spirit of God. You have the same Spirit that rose Jesus from the grave. It's the same thing. It's the picture we're seeing here where God pays off her debts. God pays off our debts, our sin, by the blood of Christ. And yet there's more than enough for us to live on with what is left over. What is always the problem is always my failure to recognize what God is doing and that he has equipped us with everything we need with the Word and the Spirit. And yet here they are just relishing. I mean, it's hard for us because we don't deal in oil, right? But let's say you had a debt you couldn't pay. And if it was going to be enough to like put your children into slavery and lose the farm, for most people you're talking, in today's money, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Easily.
Right? So enough oil shows up. It's like the Beverly Hillbillies, right? They strike oil. Right? They sell the farm and they go to, this is enough oil to like pay off your debts, keep your land, and still live on. This would have been the equivalent today of getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is just a random person, and basically the Lord says, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, keep it kind of quiet behind the closed doors.
Why do you think that is, David? Why do you think he said keep it quiet?
Well, God, even though sometimes we expect the spectacle, that's not how he works a lot of times. We talked about Elijah, where where God was found, where the Lord wasn't found in the earthquake and the fire and all the stuff. He was found in the sheer silence. And so there's a lot of times that God isn't acting in the big spectacles that we expect, but sometimes just hidden, beneath the surface. And this beneath the surface type of fashion. If but he does work.
So there has to be some seeking there on our part too. Seek me and you will find me. Like sometimes it is hidden. Even the gospel says it's hidden from people. It's a mystery. Let's look at a couple of these Jesus connections right here on this. Jesus feeds the 5,000 men plus women and children with loaves and fish. And it says every person is filled, and even the baskets that were gathered were filled.
Right.
Pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's almost exactly what's happened here.
It is.
All the jars and vessels were filled, and then it was enough to settle the debt and the need, we'll call it that, and enough to take with you to continue on. So that's almost a perfect parallel.
It is. There wasn't enough to fill one basket, and then somehow why the leftovers filled up every basket that we got.
Yeah.
That
makes
it seems like that's a Luke is in Matthew, but Luke especially, I think, is
hearkening back to this.
Hearkening back to Elisha.
Yeah. The water pots filled that turned into wine. A little plug for the sermon on Sunday about alcohol. Because you asked the pastor, we're talking about alcohol and what that means for believers on Sunday. But Jesus' first miracle, the wedding at Cana, turning the water into wine after they had drank all the regular wine. That was not Welch's. That was regular Jewish wine. But they didn't use the regular vessels.
That was the big water jugs, the big water jugs outside, I guess, for ritual cleansing.
Yeah, ritual cleansing vessels, not wine vessels. And what does his mother say? Do whatever he tells you to. And he doesn't say go get the wine vessels. He says go get those ritual cleansing ones. Now here we are again.
They'd be big.
Big, right?
Big
I
ones.
mean, they're going to have a party, right? So here you have this connection of go get whatever vessel you can find, and the Lord will fill it. And here's Jesus saying, go get these other vessels. But another little picture here.
Well, in John, it's now just remembering what John does. There's 6 pots there, and John's real big into numbers.
Yeah.
The seventh jar is the woman at the well a couple of chapters later, and she drops her pot after she gets the endless supply of the living water.
Because it's John 2,
Cana,
and it's John 4 at the well, right?
And there's some
John
people.
5's John 5's the man at the pool of Bethesda. So he's okay, I'm with you now. Yeah.
There's some scholars like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got to look for another jar, and they find it. They find it with the woman at the well.
There's no way John did not do 7. It's going to be 7, 14, 21. Like it's going to be the perfect chiasm. There's not going to be. If you don't know what that is, you can Google that and look that up. We don't have time for that. Trust me. This chiasm and the way that John writes his is why it's different from the other Gospels, amongst many other reasons. But it's got to be 7. There's no way it's not 7.
Right.
So
there's a lot of scholars, and then they find it right there, like. It's almost like you got to be kidding me, but
Yeah.
it all works out.
Yeah, it does. And then we know that Jesus came to forgive debts and pay debts. That's very clear. The propitiation of blood for sin, the reconciliation. So this all lines up. And Luke 4, 18 and 19, Jesus' mission statement is to bring the good news to the poor, proclaim freedom to the prisoners, and to set the oppressed free. We know that, which is Luke 4, 18 and 19, which is directly words exactly coming out of Isaiah 61,
right?
Being quoted as Jesus stands up and he reads Isaiah 61 to the people in the synagogue, and he says, and I'm gonna get this wrong, but in this day,
it's being fulfilled among you.
Yes, yeah,
something like that, yeah.
So, what does this tell us then, David? If Jesus says that he is good news to the poor, freedom to the prisoners, and to set the oppressed free. Tell us why this story matters because of that, how that ties in.
Well, the rich and the powerful would tend to somewhat claim that the deities are favoring them, and they'd have the whole religious system would be put in another system that just benefits them a lot of times in their own status. But the difference with Yahweh is that he can't be contained by any kingdom, and he is intimately interested in everybody because everybody is made in his image. Mm-hmm. So it shouldn't be this hierarchy, and you hear Jesus say, don't be like the Gentiles, lording authority over each other. It's because from the first page of the Bible, it's like we are made in his image. And so people are supposed to be kind of on this level equal playing field of who they are, how valuable they are in God's eyes. And and it's the widow, it's the poor. These are the people that are just marginalized. They're ignored. They're almost like, well, they're not useful to us, so therefore we're just going to sit them to the side. They're going to have to fend for themselves if they make it at all. Oh well, but God's kingdom is much different. It's no, these are images of God. We should care about these people, and He doesn't ignore them. They're very much in His attention, very much in His eyesight. And so that's why these stories where you see, in Jesus going to all the poor, the women who were also in a patriarchal society were very much less than in the society's eyes. So that's why these stories stick out when God is acting with these weaker people, the small tribes, this small tribe of Israel or whatever, and this very insignificant-looking people called the Hebrews out in the middle of all these giants around them. He chooses them. He chooses the weak things because, he's trying to say that everybody is made in His image. They're all valuable, and that's kind of the idea.
The Bible's full of it. This similar phrase about how God uses the foolish things to confound the wise, and foolishness to confound wisdom, and that He does pick David's over Saul's, which the world never would. The world's always going to pick Saul. They're always going to pick, big, tall, strong, looks the part, all those things. And yet when the moment comes, Saul's the one hiding in the baggage. David's the one going, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that stands against the armies of the living God? Like, that dude's small, but there's something, God has something in him. Now, at the end of his life, we covered that in the first episode. You can go check that out. Because we all have flaws. And and that's a good point, that even the kings, even the people God puts in very high leadership positions in churches or governments or different things, even they have very serious flaws and should be careful how they oppress and how they do things with what's been given to them and the responsibility that they have. And if you're a person here watching this and you're like, well, I'm not poor and needy, I've done very well, I'm very successful, hey, praise the Lord. We also, or spiritually, you're doing very well, or God has put you into a pastor or elder role. Praise the Lord. But that also means that we have a greater responsibility now to those that may not be as walking out in as much calling or blessing as another one might have. I also have a totally different level of responsibility that others might not. And very often in the Bible, what we see is you see two different types of people. People who submit to the Lord humbly and want to walk that out, regardless of what their office or calling or monetary value is, and those that say, we have like Job, who was very wildly wealthy, probably Moabite, but wildly wealthy, and then you have people that are wildly wealthy that use it to oppress everyone. So the Bible doesn't seem to distinguish that being, rich is good or bad. It's the real test is, how do you treat the least of these?
Right.
When you are successful, when you have money or when you have position, how do you treat the lowest of people? And that's really the ultimate test. So we got to move on. Let's look at this quick note here about this kind of story in chapter 6 before we get into the Shunammite woman. Let's kind of flip over there to chapter 6 and look at this. Some of you guys may be familiar with this axe head. And the sons of the prophets are mentioned again in chapter 6, and they seem to have this movement that's growing under Elisha's leadership. And at first, they doubted Elisha. Could he do it? Was he the guy? And then pretty much they kind of get on his side. They're hey, this is the guy now. Once he had the bear maul everybody, that's the guy's side we want to be on.
We didn't like those kids anyway.
Yeah, they were always causing trouble every time we went up to Bethel. This guy took care of them. And the same company who served Elijah were the same as for Elisha, the poor. And Elijah and Elisha, they have associated themselves with the poor. They've given up their possessions to follow Yahweh. Elisha gave up wealth. His father was very wealthy. And in chapter 6, this group needs more room to choose because they're in the wilderness in Jordan. And tell us a little bit of this story, David, about what happens as they're out here in this wilderness in Jordan. What happens to these guys when they're out there?
Well, I guess we mentioned before, if you're a son of the prophets, you're probably dirt poor.
Yeah.
And they're running out of room because it seems like under Elisha's leadership, they were growing. And it's like, and so they're going over where no one's at, kind of near the Jordan at the threshold of the wilderness, and they're chopping down trees, and then one of the workers, or one of the sons of the prophet, the axe head falls off and goes into the water, and he just exclaims, and my translation is, "Ah, my Lord, the iron was asked for," or in other words, the iron. They just call the axe head the iron, and iron is expensive.
Yeah.
It's not like you go, I'll just go to Lowe's and get one for $30 or whatever. It's that newer technology back then. This is state of the art. Iron.
We're literally just coming out of the Bronze Age. I don't want to get too history but like we're just coming out of the Bronze Age. We're moving into iron and iron weapons. This would have been within the last 100 to 200 years. The switch that would have come from the Greek and Aegean areas. They started learning how to make iron. So something of iron would have been very expensive versus something in bronze at the time, because it would have been so rare for iron ore and how hot it had to get into. This is new technology. This is the newest iPhone, right? just right into the water, right into the Jordan.
Drop the iPhone into the river.
Right in the Jordan. Yeah. Yep. So and so you think about that's exactly what happens. You borrowed, that's what it means. It's asked for. We don't have any money. We're broke. We borrow this very expensive tool.
Can't even afford my own axe.
Yeah. That's pretty poor. And then it's chopping. It breaks. It goes in, and we all go, ah. Now, nowadays, how would we replace that? We just
go to Lowe's.
Go to Lowe's, Home Depot, and just buy a new one. And
not a big deal.
Hey, bud, I broke your axe. Sorry about that. Here you go. But back then, iron was very expensive, and they couldn't pay for it. In fact, they were so poor. Think about that. You got a group that was so poor, they can't even come together to buy a single axe. They had to borrow one. That's when you know you're having it's a tough time in ministry. We've had some tough times in ministry, but we've never had to borrow an axe, So, interestingly enough, Elisha has made quite a career for himself just by randomly throwing stuff into water or just fixing a stew for his problem. So far, he's thrown some salt in the water, got a stew going, poured some oil, and sicked some bears on some kits. That's where we're at so far.
Yeah.
All right. So what does Elisha do? What is his remedy to this problem, David?
He throws wood into the water.
Okay. That's his answer.
And
throw a stick in the water.
Throws eights in the water, which that's the word for wood or tree. It's the same word. So if they saw a tree, they'd say eights, or wood, still eights. But it's the same word that they used that when Moses threw wood into the water at Marah, make the water sweet.
I was sitting here thinking somebody did that, and it was Moses, right? Is this after he struck the rock, or was that a different one?
This would have been before. This has been right after he crossed the
Jordan.
Yeah, across the Red Sea.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm
Reed Sea. Actually,
they're in the
Reed
Jordan
Sea
here.
Hebrew,
He was coming with the Reed Sea.
And
he throws the whole, basically a limb or a tree of some sort in the. You think he was mad?
Just threw wood in there, and somehow this is fixing problems. And Elisha, man, I wish I could just throw random stuff into things, because there's a pot that some guy threw like a wild vine with gourds on it, like, oh, this looks good to throw in a stew, and these guys are like, once again, there's death in the pot. and Elisha just throws flour in that and fixes it. So I guess you throw flour in a stew, it makes dumplings, I guess. So.
Oh, maybe he invented the dumpling.
Yeah,
the little flour in there.
Kind of Gordon dumpling stew.
So here we see Elisha save a widow and her two sons from financial ruin. Now we see him, another group of the sons of the prophets, saving them from a debt they couldn't pay. This would have been financial ruin as well. They could not have paid that back.
Right.
And they would have demanded some type of restitution for that. So he bails them out again. And here we see Elisha going along and bailing these guys out. Guys, men, women.
I guess it's his own people, though, to be fair. He's bailing his own folks out.
Yeah, so far. Yeah. These are his crew.
Yeah.
He continues to do a miracle. But this is about to change, because the next woman is different than the widow. This is the Shunammite woman. And let's talk a little bit about how she is described. She is described as is that a Godalah?
Godalah, yeah.
Godalah. And that is a great woman. And you noted in here in our notes that the NIV chose well-to-do.
Right.
Right?
You say if it's a great woman, it's rich.
Yeah, rich.
Generally.
She has some means.
She
right?
does.
Well off, very opposite of the woman in the widow, right? This woman has means, and she's very receptive and generous to Elisha. And every time he passes through the area, she's so generous, in fact, that with her husband's permission, they build an extra room onto their home, under the roof of their house, so that, or on the roof of their house, so that Elisha has a place to stay whenever he passes through that way. I mean, that's pretty generous.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, man, anytime you come through this way, it's one thing to say you can stay with us, and they're like, you know what? We're just going to build a room for you. Now, is there not a man, you're going to have to give me this. You're the Old Testament Hebrew guy. I spend more time in the New Testament, but was there not part of the law about the roof of the house and having to be open to the sojourner, where they have to be hospitable and open the roof up to those that were traveling? And
that's part of the parapet law I mentioned earlier, because when they sleep on the roof,
festival of tents, is that part of that too?
No, that wouldn't have been a structure strong enough to hold people. But
gotcha,
the homes they had to build this little catch on that, like that way when the sojourner, the visitors come over and they're sleeping on there, they don't roll off and break their necks.
Yeah, and because they said, hey, you're responsible for these people when they travel, and when they do, you're also responsible for their safety.
Yeah,
as part of the law. So not always upheld, but it was part of what was put in there, that they would be this nation that cares for people, this priestly nation that cares for people. So they have the means. So that's already a blessing. Not only do they follow that part of the law and take them in, he said, let us build a room for you. And then this woman is so generous. What does it prompt Elijah to ask her?
Well, she's so generous that Elisha, he's asking a very familiar question. What can be done for you?
Here we are again, right?
Yeah. Same. This phrase gets repeated quite a bit by Elisha.
Did UPS steal that? What can Brown do for you? Think they stole that?
I think so. Yeah, that's where they got it.
Yeah. We can hit him with a suit on that. I don't think so.
But I think her answer is, it's revealing more about how remarkable this woman is, because, she kind of turns him down from doing anything for her. It's like she literally says, I have a place with my people.
Yeah.
In other words, that community we were talking about earlier that takes care of each other, she's like, I have a place with my people. They're taking care of me. This is good, and this is very much in contrast to, there'd be a lot of people I think would want to be in Elisha's good favor. It's like, hey, can you just throw a blessing my way, and I need something done? And this was not her motivation at all.
Right.
She just, unlike the little twerps in chapter 2 that get mauled by bears, and actually his own company of prophets in that same chapter, she believes in this guy.
Right.
She in fact, there's this one word in there. It's actually, she was almost a little bit almost like fearfully kind of this reverence to.
And it shows a contentment and a humility on her part for her to say, I have all that I need. And basically, as a prophet, hey, don't you need to waste your time on me? I'm very blessed. We're good. She's basically saying, I don't really need anything. And her generosity is sincere. And it is very different to have, someone show up with that kind of power, and for someone to say, hey, I don't really need anything. Be the equivalent of like going to the Lord in prayer, and the Lord speaking to you and saying, what can I do for you? And you saying, hey, Lord, I'm good. I'm blessed. Like, that'd be tough. Like, if you genuinely knew the Lord spoke to you and said, David, what can I do for you? You'd be like, I'm glad you asked, because I've got a list.
Let's start with this hip that hurts.
My neck, I got a few.
Right.
I got a few things real. I got a fast list, Lord. But she's like, no, I'm good. You are. I would say it this way: there are needs everywhere, of like the widow. Now, if he would have went to these three guys that are going to war and said, "What can I do for you?" Don't you think the answer might have been very different?
Give me strength to survive this.
Strike Moab with the anger of 1,000 blazing suns. It would not have been. No, we're good. And Elisha is willing to, talk on her behalf to the king, who he doesn't even like.
Right, that's something, isn't it?
Yeah, he's going to go to this guy he doesn't like on her behalf, and it's just kind of wild. And this gets kind of weird because since Elisha can't ask her directly, he asks his assistant, Gehazi, who tells her that she doesn't have a son and her husband is old. So take us through this part here a little bit on how this goes down right here.
Well, let's see here. I'll just read that part, and that starts in verse 14. What can be done for her?
Yeah.
A little bit different. Now he's saying for her to his Gehazi's like his main assistant, and he's pretty suspect. But Gehazi said she has no son, and her husband is old. Then Elisha said, "Call her." So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. About this time next year, Elisha said, "You will hold the son in your arms." "No, my lord," she objected. "Please, man of God, don't mislead your servant." And so what's really interesting about this is that now this woman, the Shunammite woman, is being put in kind of the Sarah spot, like Sarah and Abraham. And even where Sarah hears the news that she's going to have a son this time next year, she is at the entryway to the tent, and the word is patach. Okay. And it's the same word here. It's the entryway. I think uses door here, but
mine says doorway in the ESV. Yeah.
But yeah, both of the women are sitting there at the patach, and when they hear this announcement of them having sons, and both of these women are being extremely generous because it was like, like 60 pounds of flour, was baked up or something with the 3 visitors and Sarah, and and the Shunammite woman had built Elisha a room that he could just come and go as he pleases every time he passes through this area, which I guess he did often, just going to the places that he did. She's very much in that Sarah slot right here, which I find extremely interesting, and the reactions are even kind of similar. She's in disbelief.
Yeah, especially since she's not asked for anything.
Right.
Literally, she's said, I paraphrase, "I'm good, Lord," like the prophet of the Lord. Like, I don't need anything, I'm good. And then his assistant's like, "Hey, man, what could we do for her? She ain't going to ask for anything. What could we do for her?" And then Elisha offers this great blessing, like the angel of the Lord that shows up and offers this great blessing. But there's this disbelief of, how will this be? Sarah's like, "I'm old." And she's like, "My husband's old. Like, how will this be?" And yet, neither of them, really were asking for this or expecting this. And her reaction is very understandable. She has, like you're saying, some doubts. And Elisha's announcement is the same as, Sarah's 3 visitors. And he says, "By this time next year, you'll have a son." It's almost word for word. And in a little bit, we're going to see there's some things in here that are almost, I made a note in here, I notes that almost like resemble the words of Hannah.
Yeah,
as
very
well,
much so.
With Samuel. So there's this Lord blessing people with either one that's seeking it, and some that are not, and yet the Lord shows up. So even someone that's well off still had a need.
She did.
Even though she said, "Hey, I'm good with my life, I'm good with my family." You had Hannah that still had a need, and her husband was like, Hannah's husband's like, "I don't care if you ever conceive. Like, I love you. Is that not enough?" And she's basically like, "No." If you're every husband out there, you realize, you're like, "Am I not enough?" And your wife's like, no, I want this other stuff too. And that's the reality. And she bears a son. And Elisha continues on as prophet for all these years. And unfortunately, we see that disaster strikes this family. We learn that they're on their own farm, or they own a farm, and they have servants that work with them as well. And as their son is out harvesting, learning the family business, he suddenly tells his father, which is very interesting, the wording, my head. So something happens to him all of a sudden, and he's got this, what does Bobby Boucher call it? The brain pain? Mama got the brain pain. All of a sudden he's like, my head. Like something has happened in his brain. And this father has been kind of, what's the right word for it? Underwhelming?
Very, obtuse, absent, irresponsible. Yeah. He's very passive.
Very passive, and he's so into what he's doing, he basically just sends his sick son home to his mom. Don't got time to deal with you. Go home. And then the boy goes home, and then by noon, what happens?
The boy dies in his mother's lap. This child that Elisha had just, a verse before announced
Yeah.
that you can have this miraculous conception and son.
Yeah. Now, instead of, letting despair take her over, the mother's reaction is a little more collected than that. She balances really on this knife edge of hope and despair. And if there's any hope at all, she knows there's only one thing I need to do, and that is get in touch with Elisha. I have to find Elisha. And we kind of have to take a minute to look at, respect, and I think you wrote gawk, this woman's outlook, to be like, I just have to get Elisha here. The Lord blessed me with this son through him. I have to get him here. Her son's just died. She knows he's dead, faces this reality. And yet, what does she do with the boy?
She actually puts him on Elisha's bed, kind of hides him. Here's another kind of closing the door thing. Don't let anybody see what's happening.
Yeah. And it kind of shuts out all the onlookers,
right,
all the naysayers. And this is really the hopelessness that people can bring. This is a good lesson for us all as we're believing for things and walking by faith in certain things. There are some things you're praying for and working on with the Lord that you only need to keep to yourself or people very close to you. Because there are people around you that do not want to walk in that same faith and are not going to be strong to stand with you before the Lord. And some things you need to be very careful with because they are things that really need to be trusted only to certain people in your life. And this would be one of them. And she calls for her husband to get a servant and a donkey and rush to Mount Carmel where Elisha is. And it doesn't seem she ever even tells her husband quite what's happened to him. It doesn't even mention it to him. And remarks that it's not the Sabbath or any other ritual time. And, it's not like this, they couldn't see him because of that or anything.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
It's not Sabbath, no ritual. And and she just one word. She says, shalom.
Shalom.
It's fine. It's well.
It's well.
And
peace.
And he just whatever, go do that. It's kind of the feeling. It's like, I got to do my own thing here. And so she's totally the active actor in this, and he is sort of there.
So he just sends her and a servant off with the donkey just to go get, go find Elisha. And as she approaches, Elisha spots her in the distance. Now we got a few little shades here, not exactly, but of Luke 15, the father spotting the son afar off. He sees her in the distance, and instinctively he knows something's wrong immediately. And he's clearly much more sensitive than the husband, apparently, who's totally oblivious. He doesn't even think to check on his son, who he just sent back home.
Right.
He's upstairs dead in Elisha's bed, and the dad's like...
He doesn't ask about him. Hey,
I can't be bothered with that.
How's our boy?
I'm a busy man. I got a harvest to get in.
His question is it's not Sabbath, is it?
Hey, where's that son? Where's that only son God blessed us with at? Is he still here?
Right.
And, even the prophet and miracle workers, don't know everything. So Elijah sends, his servant to meet her, and it asks a threefold question. Interesting. Shalom to you, shalom to your husband, shalom to your boy. So he asks three questions. And why do you think there's three questions there, David?
Well, he cares. He's asking about her whole family.
Yeah.
He sees her in the distance, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's thinking something has happened to either her, the husband, or the boy.
Gehazi, run out there.
Yeah.
Run out there and find out what is wrong, what is going on. And she simply gives a one-word response, shalom. And the only man, that she will speak to is the man of God. That is, she's not speaking to the middleman. She's not telling her husband. She's not telling Gehazi. She wants to come to Elisha. Now, tell us about this middleman, Gehazi.
Well, we find out he's got a very duplicitous character.
Yeah.
He's very two-faced. His name actually translates as Valley of Vision. And, everybody should know that, if you want to get a good vantage point of the land, you go down to the bottom of the valley, right? That's
Where you can see nothing.
perfect sight line.
Yeah.
Perfect sight line. And so his name, what parent names their kid Gehazi? Like, dim-sighted, goggle-eyed.
Dim and nearsighted man.
Like, who names their kid that? Like, you're not going to be able to see clearly at all. And he's just he's about as knuckleheaded as could be. He blunders through everything. And ironically, he's not like Elisha was to Elijah.
No.
At all.
No.
Because Elisha was like, very devout, very,
Yeah.
This guy is just.
And as we'll see next week, Gehazi, because we're going to run out of time here, Gehazi really ends up in a betrayal. Really, there's no other way to really call it other than what it is. And his nearsightedness catches up with him, his two-facedness, really. And as this grieving woman gets there, she grabs Elisha's feet. And he tries to push her away. Gehazi does.
Right.
Yeah, the man of great vision and character tries to push her away. And Elijah quickly responds with, leave her alone. Her nephesh, there's that word again, right?
There's the Hannah.
Yeah,
The
Hannah tie-in, is bitter for her, and Yahweh has hidden it from me and has not told me. So talk about that Hannah tie-in right there.
Well, when she was praying in front of, Eli,
Yep.
priest, who he was about blind at that point. So, there's very much the narrative, kind of Gehazi and Eli are kind of in the same, like they don't, this Hannah's in this bitter distress. She just, she wants to get pregnant, and infertility is especially brutal in ancient times because they if you didn't have kids, you might as well not have lived is kind of their
right. Yeah. What is my worth? What is my value?
Thinking. Yeah, and it just when she's just in this deep bitterness, and she's praying so hard and such bitterness that Eli actually thought that she was like just a drunken. She was just like like some kind of she's a no good Baal worshiping something,
Yeah. And then her response is very similar to this, like my nephesh is bitter, like my soul is bitter. There's this bitterness in me from this thing. And that is it echoes Elisha's response, leave her alone, for her nephesh is bitter to her. And interesting, and Yahweh has hidden it from me and has not told me. Elisha almost seems surprised. Like, God, this has happened and God didn't tell me. Like, as the prophet, he's really shocked that this is news to him at this point.
Well, even a prophet like Elijah, they don't know everything. God's not going to tell you everything.
So it's not like a fortune teller.
No, I mean, that's kind of what they expect. It's, I've seen in certain circles, they think prophets should have mysterious knowledge about the inner workings of everybody's lives, and that's not how it works at all.
Prophet literally only speaks the word of God and whatever the Lord tells them.
Right.
I had a
messengers.
I had a fortune teller card reader come in one time when I ran the jewelry store, and I was showing them a price, and they were like, "How much?" They wanted the discount. How much is that going to be? And I was like, "How much do you think? You should know." And they gave a way low price, and I'm like, "You're not very good at this, because no, that was not it. That was not my card. No." You should have known. You should have known what was in my head. Like if you. I don't want to get us too far off track because we do need to wind down, and we'll pick back up here. But in her grief, she says to Elisha, "Did I ask you for a son? Did I not tell you not to mislead me?" Like she's reminding him, I didn't ask for this.
Right.
You came to me, and you offered to give me this son. And now Elisha's sitting there like, Elisha's got to be like, yeah, and the Lord's not told me this. Like, there's got to be a bit of a panic. Like, yeah, she's right. Like, she didn't ask for this. Lord, you told me to do this for her.
Well, Elisha's response is almost like, I just got to do something. So he sends his dimwit, his dimwit assistant out with his staff. First off, like, put that on the boy. Let's see if that works.
I just see Gehazi as like, Crazy Eyes and Mr. Deeds. Like he's just like, no. He has a little staff. His eyes are crossed. Like Gehazi, yes, sir.
Right.
What do you need me to do, sir? And he's supposed to take, Elisha's staff and lay it on the boy's chest at the house. And this grieving mother, doesn't rush back to the servant because it shows the same devotion. She just believes this is going to be taken care of. And the same devotion to Elisha that Elisha had for Elijah when it says, as Yahweh lives and as your Nephesh lives, I will not abandon you.
It's word for word.
Yeah, literally word for word.
What Elisha says to Elijah is what she just says to him. So she looks much more like the proper successor than whoever this Gehazi guy is.
Yeah, and Old Testament does have prophetess. I mean, even when Jesus goes to the temple, there's a prophetess there. Anna?
Yeah.
Anna? Yeah.
Well, Deborah,
Luke,
Barak and Deborah and
Barak
Judges.
And Judges.
Oh, yeah.
That's what Luke 2, into Luke 2 with Anna. So there's not unprecedented that the Lord would use a lady in that role. But you have this interesting thing here where she repeats back the same words. So who is the person of faith, Gehazi or her? And I think we're going to have to pick up right there next week. We'll finish out with the Shulamite woman, and then we're going to move into some other just wild and crazy stuff that Elisha gets into as his ministry kind of winds down through 2 Kings. So we'll pick right back up there on the cliffhanger of what happens with her son and what happens next with Elisha and the Shulamite woman. Thank you guys for joining and watching us. Hope that you'll share this with other people. Hit that share button, like, comment. If you have questions on this, you can text those in or put those in the comments. This has been Elijah, Bears, and more. Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you.
All right. We'll see you soon.